The Basilica of San Esteban Protomártir, Saint Stephen, the first martyr, began not as a grand tower but as a humble shrine on this hillside above the bay. Tradition tells of a storm that swept across the coast when fishermen sought shelter here. In the darkness they claimed to see a light burning on the hill, though no lamp or fire had been lit. Guided safely back to shore, they gave thanks to San Esteban, and soon a chapel rose on the spot. For centuries, families climbed this slope to offer prayers and candles, believing the saint watched over their homes and their nets. In time, the chapel was rebuilt as a church, and later, when the island's fortunes grew, it was raised to a basilica, its tower built high enough to be seen from the sea. Today, the white walls of San Esteban gleam once again. From the beaches of Costa de los Leones, visitors see its tower on the far ridge, and make the journey across the island to climb the same narrow paths once used by pilgrims. Around the basilica, gardens and plazas are neatly kept, but only a short distance down the hill the streets tighten into worn concrete houses and fading paint. Tourists pass both worlds on their way up, the contrast plain at every step. From its terraces, cameras and candles alike are lifted toward the view, a sanctuary above, and the story of Monte Palma unfolding below.
Hello, and welcome back to Monte Palma. The very first thing we're going to be doing in this episode is we're going to be moving this radio tower. I don't know why I put it down there. It makes no sense. We're surrounded by hills and mountains here, so we can, obviously this would go much higher up here. So we're going to move it up a little ways and then draw a road so we get some access up here. I didn't want to put it at the top of the very top of one of these hills. It just obstructs the view a little too much, so we're just going to put it a little lower on the hillside here. And we're going to cover up the vanilla road here with some texture to make it look a little more natural looking. And spend just a little bit of time detailing the very top here so it blends into the landscape a little better. I'm not going to get super crazy with this. Just some decals and some surfaces, and that'll be it. fence just so people don't fall off the edge. I switched out the map textures here with the Remo set. Just trying it out, see what it looks like. I'm not entirely happy with the way the other textures were looking. I like the grass texture on this a little better. I'm a little up in the air about the cliff textures. I don't mind them. I wish they were maybe a bit more contrast or something to them. They seem a bit faded, but overall I think I like it. I wasn't planning on building this at all, but just as I was about to start recording this, the Netherlands regional pack dropped and there was an asset in there that I saw, and it immediately made me think of a church tower. And so that's what's going to be built here. Of course, it's the water tower. This makes a perfect central tower for a church. I'm just going to lower it a little bit. It's a little too high for my purposes. And we're going to be using the mausoleum from the cemetery here for the main church building. The great thing about the Netherlands regional pack is the coloring. They finally got it right. I can have total control over to recolor these assets any way I want. So this is perfect because I'm going for a white stone look for my Latin American region. And this is something I haven't been able to create yet, but with these assets now, this is actually somewhat doable. And it's been the biggest challenge so far with the building a Latin American city is the lack of appropriate looking churches. I've been struggling with this from day one. The church is the very first thing that got built in the series. If you are new to the series or anything like that, I highly recommend going back to the beginning, watch from the beginning. There's a bit of a story narrative going on with it, so we get you all up to speed of what's going on. But anyway, yeah, this works exceptionally well. It's exactly what the city skyline needs in order to look correct for the region. So very happy this was released, so now I can actually make these sorts of things. I will say though, this was not what I was planning for this hillside. My initial idea for what I was going to build here was just more slums like across the highway on the other side. And I was not planning for this church. A church like this would be a major tourist attraction, so that changes the dynamic. Now we have tourists coming over here all the time. So I had to rethink what I was going to build here. Also, I enhanced the hill just a little bit, made it a little more prominent, so the church sits up on a nice hilltop here. I'm going to use these cubes here to create a foundation for the building. And a few of Harbor Master Jay's stairs here just to create an access point. There's going to be several access points to this church over this hillside. Unfortunately, because I have the foundation up on these cubes, I can't draw in invisible pedestrian paths or anything like that. They won't walk on it. I might come back and use some of Sully's prop people to fill it in. I've been not using them very much, or if at all, really. I think I might start adding them just to add a bit of life to some of these buildings I'm creating here. Now, I just completely lucked out here with the placement of these stairs. They match up perfectly with the path underneath them. So when pedestrians walk up this path, it looks like they're actually walking on the stairs. I think that's the first time, this is the best I've ever been able to pull this off. I'm also doing a path network around the church. I can't have real streets up here. It would totally deform the entire landscape. So there's going to be pedestrian paths around it. And we're just going to cover them up with a nice stone net lane here. This is from the old cities net lane packs. Nice surfaces in this one. I really like these. As you can see, the pedestrians walking down the stairs there, it's almost perfect. I'm also going to be adding a stone wall around the outside so all those tourists don't fall off the edge and kill themselves. I often forget exactly how many things are actually recolorable in game. So even these fountain pools here are recolorable. So just going to lighten them up a little bit. Now, I kind of struggled with this bit. I wanted to add a gazebo to the very top here just to give it a little more interest to the tippy top, but trying to line it up with the two items. I know the transform tool can do this, but I tried using it and somehow it just wasn't working. So I used this pole here just as a guideline to line the gazebo up to the top. Now, of course, this is a church, so I thought a cross would be appropriate for the top. After looking for a few different assets, the fence pillars from the UK set seem to be the best choice here. And there's our church. Okay, on to what turned out to be far more challenging to build was this hillside residential area. When I first started working on it, I figured it would be exactly like the other hilltop slum area I built, with just stacking a few buildings, but the elevation here is a lot steeper. This took considerably more time just to piece together all these European waterfront houses to get this look. I'm only going to show you the highlights here. This was a very tedious task. I'm going to show you some examples of how I was piecing it all together, and then we're just going to skip through it fairly quickly just to save you from complete utter boredom, because it's a long process here. I wouldn't really say this is difficult to do. It's just I have to hand place every building, so it just takes a lot of time to complete. And there's a lot of imperfections, obviously, and we're just going to use some plants to disguise some of those imperfections. And I'm also going to add a small little cemetery. I've been adding these pretty much everywhere. Essentially small historic cemeteries. They're not being used anymore. People aren't being buried here anymore, but they've been here as long as the church has. And so they're not going to go away. They're going to just remain. This one's, because of the steep slope of the church, this one's down the hillside just a little ways on a piece of land that's a little flatter. Now, I don't know why I didn't realize beforehand that, yeah, we can recolor these tombs. So we make them, brighten them up a little bit. The standard gray they come in is uninteresting. Now this net lane fence, obviously, it didn't work quite as well as I was hoping. They don't really conform to terrain very well, so we once again have to use some shrubs here just to hide some of the awkward bits. I also had this rather awkward little triangle here, and I wasn't really sure what to do with it. And then I thought we could turn it into maybe a little viewing platform here. So we're gonna use these cubes to build a bit of a platform. I thought it would be like perfect place for a statue, probably something associated with the actual church. Of course, we don't have statues, but we do have these heads. So I'm going to use this head. Now this circular object here is these were created by Harbor Master Jays. They're just the central part of a roundabout. And I can think of all sorts of interesting ways to use these. This particular staircase here, I think it nearly broke me. I wanted to put in a staircase, but I also wanted to make it functional. Because the first one I put in, worked so perfectly, somehow I got it in my head that I could do the same thing here. And I spent way too much time fiddling around with this. I finally got it to work. It's not perfect. People sink into the stairway. And really, I couldn't really figure out a good way to fix it. So I made it as best I could. They use it. It is functional, so people do come up and down here, so that's good. But yeah, you can't look at it too closely because right there you can see them sinking into it. I tried. I could not get that to work. And then I spent a fair amount of time here also just lining buildings up so there's access, so people can access these buildings from the stairway. I'm just going to skip ahead here a little bit. So this is the hillside completely finished. Several hours of work, so I couldn't really compress that down into a reasonable amount of time for video, so you get a good look at it here. We got some commercial buildings along the main roads and just a few back alleys and stuff filled in with a few more residential houses. Turned out really well. I'm very happy with this. Now, how I'm thinking of this is obviously right at the very top, all the houses around that's a huge tourist draw, right? So that's all going to look very pretty. But as you move down the hillside, it's going to be very, literally within a block. By the time you get to the bottom, it's going to be essentially a slum area, which is fairly common for this area of the world. You could have major historical sites, huge tourist draws, and they're walk one block away and you're in the scariest neighborhood you've ever been in kind of thing. Maybe that might be a bit extreme, but yeah, you get the idea. Now for this next section, I had to redraw the roads a bit. We have a pedestrian path coming right off the hillside down here, and I wanted to create a market area, like an open market, which I haven't built yet. Really haven't built it anywhere in the city yet. This also turned out to be a huge struggle because I wanted pedestrians to use it, but I also wanted a reason why the pedestrians would want to walk down here. So we used a pedestrian road and some stairs here at the very end that hide this really weird connection. I like the final look of it. It looks amazing, but the way this functions, I'm not particularly happy with it. The amount of service vehicles and delivery trucks that drive through here, I don't know why they label these as pedestrian roads, because there's way too many cars on these things. I'm happy with how it turned out. I'm just not happy about how the area functions. Now I'm going to cobble together some assets here to create some custom buildings. We're using these Japanese storefronts. And these new low rent housing units from the Netherlands pack here. In order to get people to actually use the area, I used some service cubes here to give them, turn them into commercial buildings and actual housing units. I think I might have to change that. That's the reason why there's so many delivery trucks and service vehicles driving through here. It's to service these things. The amount of postal trucks that drive through here, every 30 seconds, is just crazy. Anyway, this is the reason why there's so many cars driving down here. So I think eventually I'm going to have to remove these. But once I develop out the waterfront here, I think we can move most of the commercial buildings over there, and people will probably still use this as a pedestrian pass through. Now I wanted this to be an outdoor market, and if you look at these pedestrian roads, you'll notice that the pedestrians actually walk through the center, and the outside are used for delivery trucks when driving right there. So I thought what I'd do is the road section, I'd cover it up with all these vendors and tents and all this sort of stuff to create this outdoor market. Really like the look of it, but like I said, we have trucks and everything driving for all the tents. It just looks a little stupid. So I'm going to have to figure out a different way to do this, I think. But I do like the overall effect. And I felt like this area needed a lot more signage. So I'm going to spend a whole lot of time here adding a whole bunch of signs. I added a whole bunch of neon signs here because I wanted this to look really at night, to have a really intense look about it, very active. And I tried to film some cinematics of that, but I couldn't get it to work properly. All the cinematics I shot, there was this tremendous amount of pixelation to the images, so they all were just ruined by it. I'll try fiddling around with it because the night shots here looked really nice. And I spent some time putting lights around the church and everything to light it up. It also looks really good, but I was also having the same problem, like horribly pixelated images and stuff. So I'm not sure. I'll have to like play around with that a little more, see if I can fix it. I'm also going to expand this market out. That was just a test run to test out the idea, but I'm going to definitely add to it. Right along the highway here, that seemed like the perfect location to add some low-income housing. The vanilla low-income housing is just way too high, so I sunk it into the ground a little bit just to make it a little shorter so it doesn't dominate the skyline too much. For this section, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on here. I'll come back to this in a different episode, and it's essentially going to be a light industrial area, and I really wasn't sure exactly how I want to go about building it quite yet, so I'm putting down some buildings here just to fill it in. These are all functional, but yeah, I definitely have to come back and finish off this particular section at a future date. The biggest challenge here is this entire area is all on a slope, and so just trying to fit everything in so it looked correct, and a little bit of time to piece this together. And just some last minute additions to the market. Okay, just some final detailing here around the edges to finish this off. Make these social housing units here look a little more run down than they do. that brings us to the end of this episode. If you stuck around to the end, thank you so much. I will see everybody in the next episode. Bye.